So, welcome again, everybody, to the final 2025 episode of the Mindful Academy. Thank you so much for giving us your ears, whether you are doing so in December of 2025 or at some distant date in the future. Welcome here. My name is Jennifer Askey. I'm your coach, and today I am meeting with another consultant coach colleague who services higher ed, but from a completely different angle. I am meeting with Mya Andersen of, oh my goodness, and I did not write down the name of Student Empowered. That's the name of your company, Student Empowered. And she works with incoming and pretty freshly baked college and university students. So I'm going to hand her the mic and let her tell you a little bit about what she does and why she does it. And then we're going to have a really interesting conversation about undergraduate education. Mya, go for it.
I hope you know what, it's going to be interesting to us. So that's all that matters. That's all that matters. I'm Mya Andersen. I am an independent academic life coach for college students. I also work with families via summer readiness programs, and families are also incorporated into my coaching because that does matter. I like to say that high school makes you capable, but it does not make you college ready. And so I do the part of making you college ready. And being college ready is having the skill set of having clarity, having confidence, self-authorship, self-advocacy, understanding a system that is brand new and unfamiliar so that you can navigate the system on your own terms once you master the art of navigating the system. My approach is mostly about helping students understand themselves, what makes you happy, what doesn't make you happy, and making your decisions with intention versus reacting to the situation. And I partner with the student, their family, and the goal is to build sustainable systems around priority management, academic resilience, and career alignment so that you don't just survive college or, hey, I did it and it's great, but you thrive and in college and genuinely have a plan after college.
And what brought you to this work?
So this is going to be a second part of the podcast.
We have veered left already.
That's right. Okay. So in all honesty, COVID broke me. And I don't think that is an unusual thing. There was the great resignation that happened during COVID on college campuses everywhere. We had planned to relocate to a new state in July of 2020, not knowing what 2020 was going to look like. And so my plan had been to just look for work in the new state. And that had been the plan all along. And then we went on spring break and then we never came back. And everything changed really quickly. And there were things that I consistently saw students struggle with. Their best laid plans were hijacked consistently with key things that I knew if I was case managing 500 students, I would never, ever have a sense of accomplishment in helping the greater portion of students I worked with, helping them with mastery. Like it just was not going to happen. And working within that bureaucratic space limited my opportunity to teach students these skills. But it also added a layer of complexity, which was you can teach this skill, but you have to teach this skill within the confines of X institution. And the concept of higher education is pretty consistent, campus to campus, but every institution is just a little different. And if you are working for an institution, you are representing that campus. And so if you say to a student, you may not be able to achieve this because this is not the campus where that's going to happen for you, then why are you here as an employee? And why are you continuing to do this? Why haven't you moved to a different campus? Is a very easy question to ask. So for me, it was, I want to do this thing and I want to do it well. And the focus is so heavy on admissions. We talk about admissions, it is headlines left and right. The focus is so much on admissions. Every institution spends tons of money on marketing and admissions. What we're not talking about is the actual experience afterwards and what students are actually doing well, what students are really struggling with, and what students are doing after that admissions decision.
And so were you working in student services and advising prior to going out on your own, or
So the
were,
last position that I had, this is, I'm sure if you're listening, everyone will get a little chuckle off this from this. The last position I had was a grant funded position with a cohort of 75 students. I was working in the state of Texas at a 2-year, had a grant funded position with a cohort of 75 students that I was taking from 6th grade level reading, writing, and math to college level in the first year. So my responsibility was everything outside the classroom. So I was pairing with, so that these students were in courses with faculty that we were all working towards the same goal. And so these are faculty who genuinely want to be teaching students who are not going to be like a typical college student. So it wasn't just advising, it was a little bit of everything. How to college.
yeah, how to college? Yep,
If you're a first generation student, you don't know how to college. If
correct.
you potentially aren't a first generation student, but you didn't grow up in the household of the people who did go to college, you don't know how to college. There's so many factors that make how to college a variable. And honestly, nobody knows how to college. It's just that this group of students was lucky enough to be selected to have somebody help them with that.
And so you got to see up close and personal a certain really well-defined set of barriers and have a small group of people where you could probably see, oh, here we are making progress. Oh, let's celebrate this win. Let's
It
you could
was
really get in there with people.
okay.
We have
So
strategy.
the good stuff is yes, got to do all those things. The bad news is I only got 3/4 of the way there because once campuses closed, I had to drop that cohort of students because it was no longer your case managing this collective group of 75 students. It was your case managing the student population, just like all of us are. And that really, like, that is something that broke me. That is something that made it really hard to feel good about what I was doing every day. When I have created a relationship with these kids, I have established myself as a safe and reliable individual.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can't immediately translate that to hundreds of people you've never met overnight.
No, you cannot do that. When I try to explain that there was concern about how it was taking us so long to resolve things via email with students, one of the first things I said is students do not know what they need most of the time when they go to an office on campus. They just know they're supposed to go to that office. And so when they walk in, they see somebody, and that person asks them leading questions. And the leading questions define the need or want. That doesn't exist via email. We cannot ask students to make that adaptation in real time while everything else is happening.
Yeah. Yeah, COVID as an interesting watershed for the industry of higher education and for the students who are coming into it now who did junior high or senior high during COVID, and what did that break for them?
I was like early 22. I had shifted from what just happened to, oh my gosh, this is going to be great. This is the space that reform is going to be embraced and things are, it's that eternal optimism that will get me. It's
Yeah, I'm sure it was on LinkedIn, and of course I can't cite my source right now, but somebody was talking about like big watershed social moments and then like the 5 year out prognosis. And so being 20 at the end of 2025, so we're 5 years out from that first debilitating wave of COVID, and maybe just now, especially given the 4 year cycle of higher education and high school and all that, we're maybe just now seeing what fruits that particular tree is bearing, and both for faculty and staff, for students, and for the community that is supposed to be higher education. And when you and I were prepping for this talk, we we came up with a couple umbrellas where my work with faculty and administrative leaders and your work with students look at the same thing from different angles. And one of those is the question of how do we talk about the value of an undergraduate education? And so in the US, we tend to just say a college education. I'm calling from Canada, and here college is very specifically a 2 year thing. And so we say university education, but we're talking about the same thing. Undergrad, BA, 4 year supposedly degree that takes you from high school to grown-uphood. And
adulting.
you go from, do I know how to use the washing machine, maybe, to, sure, I'll pay taxes, you bet. And
What a terrible like timeline. What a terrible timeline. Oh no,
it's a lot.
everything is the wrong color. Taxes? Like,
It's a lot to go through, and learning how to live with other people and roommates and professors and grades and different kinds of expectations. And for many students, geographical relocation, either small or large scale, right? Rural to urban, moving states, moving from a small environment to a big environment, or maybe having the luxury of attending like a small liberal arts college, but you come from a big urban center. So you're going through all of these changes. Your prefrontal cortex hasn't fully developed, and you are in a community, some more residential and close-knit than others, that is that has a culture, and that culture is probably determined to a large part by faculty and staff that stay there a really long time, but also by these 4 year waves of students. And so thinking about how we talk about the value of that degree in an era when, man, you can read the news and see all sorts of people questioning whether it's worth it. So I think that's one of the things that I want us to talk about. What's the language you use with people? What language do you hear your students and their families using? And the other thing that sort of unites our work, or that gives us two related perspectives on something, is this notion of student experience, right? So admissions, recruitment, and then one of the ways that a certain type of university sells itself is on the student experience. What kind of gym do you have? What kind of athletic teams do you have? The club system, is it a Greek university? Is it not a Greek university? All of these things that are supposed to make up the student experience are part of the admissions and recruitment campaign. Come here because it will be an awesome place to spend 4 years. And my belief, and I think your shared belief, that we can't have a great and awesome student experience if we have a faculty and staff experience that sucks. So, like,
yeah.
the leadership on campus impacts your freshmen and your senior faculty in different ways, but there is an impact on all of those populations by campus leadership and by that culture that's created. So, those are the contexts that are on my mind as we launch into this conversation. But let's start with the value, that tiny thing. What is the value of an undergrad degree, and how do your clients and their families talk about that?
So this year, I have not had, I think that this is the first year that the value component has been attached to an undergraduate degree. There's been different, is it the right college? Is it the right major? Is it this? Is it that? But it hasn't, this year is the first year that has really been attached to a singular word of value. And when you were talking about the things that students experience when they leave to go to college, if we like, right there is like where to me in my mind is where the value part begins. And hey, this is like some
There's a
big
lot to
achievements.
be cranky about in higher education.
No, there is.
There's a
And
whole bunch to be
it
cranky.
really is. There is, so it's really easy to get to start picking it apart and finding things that are problematic. So let's shift to the not being cranky stage. So when you were talking about all of the changes that first year students go through, that's value. Because if you like, what helps us grow and become who we are as individuals is not about sitting in a lecture hall. It is 100% about a giant shift in your social structure and your socioeconomic class because of the campus you are on and knew everything.
Yeah.
That is value, because without learning how to do that, you perceive yourself to be at a place in life that is never contested. It's never challenged.
Yeah.
It's never, you aren't ever having to assess your value system. You aren't ever assessing like morally and ethically, how do I respond to that?
Yeah.
Now, we could argue that happens in the workplace, and that is a fair argument. However, the workplace is built for people that have already done that process.
And by bringing up workplace, you bring in the second part of this question around like the value of an undergraduate degree, which is, are young people spending 4-ish years getting a BA so that they leave with a checklist of qualifications for entry level employment in the economy? Or are they spending 4-ish years getting a BA so that they leave capable of navigating an increasingly complex planet?
What
And
if you could do both?
okay, how does that work, Maya?
So,
I'm
and
a
to me, this is
humanist,
like,
so I'm born skeptical about this. And I joke, I have a PhD in German. I don't get to tell anybody what they should study. So how does that work? I think you and I know how it works. But against the backdrop of this conversation about the value of an undergraduate education, maybe the better question is, what's the value of an undergraduate degree in philosophy or French or German or religious studies?
yes. And that, honestly, that's an argument to be had. And I'm happy to take on that argument because I spent a brief period of time in the theater and dance department at a large research based UC campus. And that major did not fit in. And one of my responsibilities was giving it value and why it should continue. But back to this, how do you get the two? So once upon a time, your first year of college was, let's get the hang of this new stuff. Your first year of college was, here's everything that you know for sure, but we're going to put you in classrooms that are going to stretch you about what you know for sure. We're going to give you courses with subjects that are going to be things that maybe you are highly informed on or completely uninformed on. And if you're highly informed, you are going to have the opportunity to see opposing viewpoints. You're going to have the opportunity to see people debate with the ability of everybody comes out with a new understanding. If it's something that you know very little about, you are going to leave knowing more but also witnessing that how people can debate, and hopefully the faculty that is teaching that class is facilitating a debate that allows for students to see different viewpoints. Like, undeniably, the class that was the most difficult for me was an ethics class, because I love to like debate based on opinions and facts, and I like to mix them up. I'm not very good about sticking with one or the other. But the thing about that class that will never leave my mind is how many times there was one person that had really big feelings and wanted to stand up, and everybody needed to comply with their way of thinking. And the professor's response was, hey, hold on, talk your stuff, say the things you need to say, but you are surrounded by a room of peers that want to also engage in this conversation. And the goal here is for everybody to leave thinking differently than when they arrived. So when your first year of college is built around that type of classroom experience, you are then able to start building that checklist, right? But you're also starting to have this profound level of self-knowing, of personal development, of pushing back against the things that maybe you don't believe in or you do believe in. All of those sorts of things start to happen. It isn't, I want to be an engineer, so we're going to put you in an engineer path, and your second semester you're going to take statics. And the person who's teaching that class may or may not find any joy in teaching it, but everybody knows the purpose of that class is to break you. Why are we breaking kids their second semester of college? Why are we not putting students in an engineering or a STEM path? Let's give them that first year of lots of validation, because that's what makes a good engineer. Let's go back to the building blocks piece versus the hurry up and wait because you just graduated from college.
The notion of that certain majors have curricula that are designed to weed students out. On a pre-med track, it's usually organic chemistry. It's
Mm-hmm.
designed
Yep.
to weed you out. Is statistics designed to weed out certain students? And there are a couple things to be said about that. I was talking to somebody who works in like leadership and organizational development in a med school recently, and it was at a social event. We'd each had a couple glasses of wine. And at some point, I said things that I read about medical education make me look at it as more of a shared hazing ritual than a education in ethical, compassionate care. And he almost snorted his wine out his nose, but said, yes, yes, that's actually right. So this notion that you have to suffer to earn this degree that then makes you special. What I find problematic about that is the way that plays out within the institution and creating like classes of students and who's
Yes.
worthy of certain, like that's, it doesn't
But
play out in ways that are community supporting. It plays out in ways that are damaging and toxic. And you and I are recording this 2 days after yet another horrible thing on a university campus in the United States, where I don't know many of the details, but I do know that the shooting happened in an engineering building. I just, and when I read that news, I was like, oh yeah, and Maya and I were talking about pressure cooker environments. Oh, I hope that isn't what this is about. But, right, are we creating environments of fear rather than environments of when I was young, which increasingly seems like the dark ages, but it
the
was
1900s.
right, the 1900s, go to university to broaden your horizons. That was literally a phrase that was used. And now that seems like such a sort of clueless and privileged stance to take.
Yes.
And the
Oh,
stakes seem really
broaden your
high,
horizons. That's so cute.
but it's
Yeah.
also
Like,
like fundamental.
my ethics class, the reason it stands out to me is that professor repeatedly said, you are going to be mad. You are going to be mad about the things you are hearing and saying in this class. You're not mad at me, okay? You are mad at what I am presenting you because I am pushing you to think about things in a way you've never thought about them. Yeah, I was mad. There was a lot of times I'd be like, oh, just like gritting my teeth. But do you know how much I learned about my capacity for communication, my capacity for digesting information, my capacity for articulating myself in a way that did not demean another person, was not disrespectful, and most of all, did not demoralize another person. And there are like things for me that I don't miss are kicking a kid out of a major or kicking a kid out of college for a semester because they just keep crashing and burning. If you are demoralized, what you don't need is another kick in the teeth. What you do need is, hey, this isn't working. You're going to take a little mini vacation. But while you are on vacation, keep coming in to see me, because that semester you're not in classes, we are going to figure out what went wrong.
Yeah. And how many institutions, and this I think gets to your business model, how many institutions have the people that can actually do that intervention with a student?
Oh, no, coaching exists. Like, my genuinely one of the inspirations for here's this wild idea, hang out your shingle, hope for the best, we'll just hang on for dear life, was how many times that I'm just flipping a Rolodex through kids who, like, this is D-Day and I'm kicking you out. Or you are on academic watch, suspension, all the phrases that we use or don't use.
Yeah.
And you're bringing me your mid-semester grades and it is breaking you because you know what I'm going to say. Why are we stepping in to give students tools, to give students resources when they color outside the lines? Why are we not giving them those things from the beginning? There is a former student athlete, pretty sure played football at USC, maybe a few other, came from the big schools. Student athlete, football player, and he was injured. And he quit. His name is Max Brown. I'm not going to try and give you his biography because I'll probably misrepresent it. But he did a TikTok that I use over and over. And the whole gist of the TikTok is this, of the video is this: don't wait until it's a problem to address it, because then the conversation is 100% about there's a problem we are trying to address. Instead, build in safety nets. And so when the problem occurs, it is not about the problem. It is about, we have a problem, but wait, hold on, look, there's a safety net there. And so we can tackle this. We were prepared, maybe not for this exact thing, but we were prepared. And so for the kid who has never received a C on an exam and receives a C for the first time and is completely gobsmacked by that experience, what if we had a conversation with that student before, to the effect of, hey, this might happen, but it's okay. And here's why it's okay. But even furthermore, when it happens, come see us. We're just waiting for you, and we're going to be kind about it. We're not going to make fun of you. We're not going to do those things. Also, you're not broken.
Yeah. You got to see in stats. Join the club.
Or maybe not. Maybe you're talking to somebody who was a rock star in stats. But wouldn't it be great if the person who was a rock star in stats had the capacity to say, Just because I'm good at that doesn't mean everyone else is. And here's what made me good. Let me teach you my skill set. Let me teach you what made me successful. And so then you can do it. It's the whole like, go to the tutoring center. Why would you go to the tutoring center? Like, you're just going to walk in and do what? What students don't realize is that tutor had to work to the place of success to be able to tutor another student. It's not only you're going to get smarter, but you're also going to hear someone's story and maybe learn about different ways to tackle a problem.
Yeah. W- Something that you said about that ethics class is sitting with me
Tell me.
because it gets to, I have a lot on my mind today. I have a client at Brown. That's how I started my morning.
Go for it.
All right, so we're going back and forth on what to record and what not to record. We're talking a little bit about the shooting at Brown, which is still a developing story because they really, last I heard, they don't know who did it. But what I was going to say, what led me down this path, is your conversation about ethics and this notion of window of tolerance. And that, and in layperson's terms, we might call it our comfort zone. And
Mm-hmm.
part of the work of becoming a fully functional adult is to be able to work to expand your comfort zone and to understand what it means to grow that comfort zone because it means growing your capacity as a human being to deal with stuff. You and I used to work at
Yes.
academic institutions
Yeah.
where we acknowledge that in order to work well together, we have to be able to expand our comfort zone. We have to be able to hear viewpoints that rub our fur the wrong way. We have to occasionally follow rules that we find inane. We write there policies and procedures that are there to ensure some kind of equity and level playing field, and they don't always feel efficient or feel fair, right? Like we all have to do things that we don't like. We call it adulting now, but it is also expanding our comfort zone. And so part of the argument I hear you making is going to university, going to college is first and foremost an exercise in expanding your comfort zone, expanding your window of tolerance and learning what that window of tolerance is. Like maybe some people go from a window that's this far open to much, much further open, and other people are like, no, I can't quite go that far. I'm going to stay pretty much the way I was in high school. I don't think many people get through 4 years without growing their window of tolerance. And I think I hear you saying that's one of the real values. And
It
so, yeah, is that what you're saying?
okay. It is. And I actually, so I use comfort zone because it is relatable for my students. It is tolerance, though. Let's just call it
Window of
what it
tolerance is
is.
the psychological term, right?
Yes, it is
It's not the,
tolerance. And at what point in the American K through 12 experience are you explicitly asked what you are tolerant of? You aren't. And that's okay because based on your social and emotional development and your Swiss cheese frontal lobe, you may or may not know what you are tolerant of. But wait, what if we did ask? What if we created structures and environments that allowed for this is my level of tolerance? Here's what I can and here's what I can't. And then I know when I go to college, if my roommate turns our room into a hot box, I'm complaining because it exceeds my level of tolerance. I'm not complaining because I don't like the smell. That is part of it, but it's also, it exceeds your level of tolerance.
yeah.
Identifying what your threshold is a big deal.
Yeah. I think that
But
is,
how, and honestly, I don't think so I've been reading this book. It's called 10 to 25. David Yeager is the author. He is a faculty at University of Texas. I love this book. I love this book. I feel like I'm like a little too much of a fangirl of this book, but he uses a term that I love, and it is like adolescent. Basically like that adolescents don't have the capacity for. They are incapable. And his argument is we have to stop saying that adolescents are incapable of these things. They are. It's just that we're not presenting this to them in a way that they can navigate it. So what if we stopped writing them off and we started mentoring them so that they can work through, they can navigate this stuff, they can do these things. Let's stop the that's just how they are at that age conversation. Yes, we can bring that in. But what if we say, you know what? That's how they are at that age. We're going to mentor them
Right.
so that they actually excel through the process.
Making the unwritten curriculum explicit.
Oh my goodness. Here's a wild idea. We're actually going to give you a map. We're going to
Yeah.
give you a map. Like this is, so I frequently say, I'm the map, I'm not the GPS. And the reason I say that is exactly for that reason. We're going to give you a little map. Okay.
Oh.
And just this year, we just need you to get to this destination. And we're not going to start putting in a million different distractions that are going to make you take the first exit ramp and not get back on the route.
Yeah.
But what we are going to do is we are going to give you a bunch of information so that when you take that exit, because your threshold, you've exceeded it, you can sit back and say, okay, what was that? What next? How do I?
Yeah. And there is such an enormous unwritten curriculum in higher education. And my own,
Why? Tell
right,
me
I
what.
went to private universities, I taught at large public universities, I've covered the gamut, and then I moved to Canada and taught and worked at Canadian universities that are all public and huge. And every university maybe has a slightly different, as you were saying at the outset, a slightly different unwritten curriculum of how you navigate this space successfully. And maybe each individual major or each individual school within a university has its own little unwritten curriculum. But there are also incredibly high stakes for the campus, right? Everybody's worried about enrollment cliffs and demographic shifts, and oh, we all need these students, and we need the bums in seats, we need the money, we need the money. And then within each campus, is it the theater and the dance program that's having kittens? Because in the year of our Lord 2025, what parent is going to let their kid major in arts? I say this as somebody whose child is majoring in studio art at a large Canadian university because, as I said, I have a degree in German. I don't get to tell anybody what to take because I believe that we figure our stuff out and that learning how to make beautiful things is in and of itself a value in the world.
And so here is my first response to that. Why are you not treating college like a big ticket item? If you are going to go buy a new car, which honestly is a fair cost comparison, how much do you research before you go to that lot? How prepared are you before you go to the lot? You test drive it. You actually do the thing as the owner of it. But that doesn't happen in college. So
It's a
if
fascinating
you are
comparison.
investing in a big ticket item, did you buy the extended warranty? And if you didn't, why didn't you? Because if that car breaks down, that's on you. But also to the big ticket item point, if you go and buy the fastest, swankiest, bestest everything vehicle, and all you do is drive to the grocery store and back on a weekly basis, you are doing it wrong because you are not getting your ROI by how you're using it.
That is such a smart
So
analogy.
if you are going to the best school, are you driving back and forth to the grocery store once a week? Or are you hitting all the places on a daily basis? Because if you paid $90,000 for that vehicle, you better know the ins and outs of what it can and cannot do for you.
Right. Yep.
Why are you not approaching your college education with the same mindset? Now, I say this because for me, I was a non traditional student. I grew up in a place where people did not go to college. I did not know how to college. I didn't know any of those things. And it wasn't that I didn't see value, it's that I didn't understand the investment piece. And so when the investment piece was explained to me, then I got more courageous about doing the thing that I wanted to do, but didn't know how to do. And so for me, I looked at the bottom line every semester. I knew how much money I was spending. I knew what was happening because that was my personal responsibility. So my perspective was wildly different.
Yeah.
But parents of the world, why are you not looking at it that way?
Yeah.
People that are paying the cost for students to go to college, why did you go and buy a Lamborghini to drive it around like a Honda Accord?
And the notion of the Honda Accord BA versus the Lamborghini BA is super interesting. It's also incredibly American.
Oh, it's so American. It is
Because
so American.
I am super familiar now with Canada's higher education system. I'm also very familiar with the higher education system in Germany. You could throw a dart at a board and hit a university in Canada and be fine. Ditto Germany. Yeah, this university does more of that and less of this. But whether you're at the Universität Hamburg or Maximilians Universität in München or right, nobody cares. Nobody cares. There may be three universities in each of those countries that kind of rise to the top. Other than that, nobody cares. Nobody cares, and it doesn't matter. But that doesn't mean that these conversations around what do we want to have students do for 4 years so that we can continue to have a robust sector, right, full of eager, bright little minds. Like those questions are the same, even in systems that are so radically different, right?
Yeah.
It's an expense, but it's not a Lamborghini, and yet we still want to talk about value. And that I'm interested in like how these conversations around what students are putting in and getting out, how they impact faculty day-to-day reality. And I think you and I decided secretly long ago that we're just not going to talk about AI because I just can't. I'll begin foaming at the mouth and nobody needs
Because
to hear or see that. So
I legitimately have a very torrid love affair with AI. And so there are
that's the secret podcast, Maya. Shh, don't tell anybody about the Torrid Love Affair podcast. But like all I see when I'm on social media, on LinkedIn, when I'm talking to my clients is we're worried about enrollment. We're worried about enrollment in the humanities and arts. We're worried about students and AI and cheating and unethical behavior. And we're worried that nobody sees value in what we do because we're interested in broadening horizons and increasing human empathy and things like that. And the more I listen to you talk, the more I hear and in our prep conversation, this came up. The trend I have noticed with inside institutions in creating degree programs over the last couple decades is more professionalization of undergraduate degrees. And so,
because there's this perception that that will make you workplace ready.
right? And so everybody's trying to, it's a combination of workplace ready and if we professionalize our degree, if we professionalize our anthropology degree, and we make sure that for the 4 years they're here, we take up 3 solid years of nothing but anthro courses because budget dollars follow bums in seats. And so we need to hoard our students, right? Again, this just ratchets up the stress for everybody. And it does not create these opportunities to do some low stakes learning, to do some actual exploration, to fail a class, right? None of those things are okay when you have increasingly professionalized undergraduate degrees that require students to leave essentially ready to go to grad school or maybe get a job. I don't know. I don't know if students get jobs in 2025. From where I sit, my sense is no, nobody's getting a job.
That, but also the grad school piece. So you're going to go from high school to undergrad and from undergrad to grad school. And somehow, when you are done with grad school, you are going to absolutely be career ready, absolutely know what you want to do, and never deviate.
Yeah.
So I guess what we're asking for is we're just asking for everybody to just run through the pipeline. We're just going to push you through this pipeline and do not think about different things. Don't look anywhere else. Don't explore. We're just
No time to be a
pipelining
ski
everybody.
bum, no time to
Yep.
be a barista,
None
no
of those
time
times. We
to,
are pipelining to tax doll. Like you are literally, our goal is for you to be a taxpayer. Lived in a state where there was a 60% of our state's residents will have degrees by 2030. Okay, that sounds fantastic. How are we going to do it? It's a policy. So we don't really have any money. But what we are going to do is we're going to do pathways. And so everybody is going to get a prescriptive pathway so that they can have a degree and enter the workforce. Correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't this why everybody hates millennials? Isn't this why everybody gripes about millennials with their profound amount of student debt, no direction, so on and so forth? Wait a minute. The solution to this is not pathways. Okay. The solution to this is actually learn some things, broaden
and
your
maybe that
horizon.
learning is in a classroom and maybe
Yes, it is not. Honestly, there is a lot to be said for gap years. There is a lot of wisdom in gap years, and I absolutely support them. The problem gap years get a bad rap is because people equate hanging out in your parents' basement playing video games and gap years as being the same thing. And they don't have to be the same thing.
no,
There's
that's
a
not a gap
lot to
year.
be said for experiential learning.
Yeah.
Like Berea, I think it's Berea University.
Yep.
Okay. So Berea, it's experiential learning. Like you are not
Everybody
going to
works.
everybody works. You are not going to have a tuition, but everybody works. Like we don't care about all the other things. Everybody works. And I'm 99% sure that a student graduating from tiny little Berea University has a lot more capacity to income, growth. The list goes on than the student that went to Wisconsin. Sorry, Wisconsin, you just came to mind. I'm throwing you under the bus. But any large, quote, state sweatshirt school. So everybody's competing to get into that school. But then what? And so if you are at that big state school, bring a coach in your first year because that coach is going to say to you, have you gone to career services? And they're going to walk you through why you go to career services in your second semester. And that, yes, you're going to walk in there and you have no idea what you're doing there and you have no idea how to answer their questions. But if you start the conversation, you will begin to understand what real world application of your major looks like. Here's an example. I have a student who, marine biologist, everyone who knew this student far and wide, you will be a marine biologist. That's what you're supposed to do. Marine biology, marine biology. No one had ever said, did you know to become a marine biologist, you have to take a bunch of hard chemistry classes? No one had this conversation. So fails the first chem class. And then it becomes, I am a failure. But first of all, you're not a failure. Nobody told you that chem was part of it, or when they told you, it didn't mean anything to you because you have no context and you don't know what you don't know. So, what if we talk about why marine biology?
Otters,
What makes you think
dolphins.
that? And so literally it was because I love the dive. And so my response was, I want you to give me a very short statement on a perfect dive. What is a perfect dive? It's this and this. And what was the perfect dive for the student was the opportunity to talk about what they saw when they were in the water. There was no science at all. It was entirely the ritualistic prep, the like absolutely making sure everything is right, what and coming up and community of conversation about what. And so I then say, hey, what if you did marketing for an aquarium? What if you were somebody who told people about why an aquarium experience was fantastic? And part of that was that you got to dive in a tank and show them why. What about that? And literally, no exaggeration, like the world stopped spinning for a minute. And the student was like, you can do that? Yeah, you can. And literally, everything shifted. Everything shifted because it wasn't, I can't ever be a marine biologist because chemistry is just throttling me and I'm a failure because I didn't pass the class, and the list goes on. The like whole whirlwind of why you're not doing and what you're doing wrong. And the conversation instead shifted to, wait, hold on. Actually, what I really love has nothing to do with the science part. If that student, and mind you, that student is at a small private, like liberal arts school. But honestly, I'm going to like really build up coaching here for a minute.
No, absolutely.
Without coaching, that wouldn't have happened. That student would have pushed through to be a marine biologist and hated it.
So this is something that you and I didn't prep in advance, but this is definitely where our work is the same because I work with faculty and leaders, and there are a lot of people out there who go BA, MA, or MS, PhD, and then they get a job by some grace of the universe, and then maybe they get tenure, and then they're in their 40s, and nobody has ever asked them, what do you really love?
Or maybe you are the faculty teaching that chemistry class, and that student has come to you broken, and you literally have spent your whole career
Invested in this thing being the most important thing in the whole wide universe. And so if they failed at it, you can't talk to them because they've just failed at the most important thing in the whole wide universe that you've dedicated your entire life to.
yes. And we're going to say that professor, I went to their office hours and they didn't care. They didn't care. I tried to talk to them about it. And you know what? I was trying to talk to them about it. They just told me about things that are irrelevant, or they couldn't communicate. The list goes on. And so therefore, this professor is uncaring. This professor is mean. This, all of these types of things. And then your parents who just bought the Lamborghini are really
You,
mad
yep, they bought you
that
a
you,
Lamborghini and you maybe wrapped it around a tree.
yes, or that you don't have your own personal parking space with your name on it. They're really mad about that because in their minds, purchasing the Lamborghini means that the waters will be divided 100% of the time for you.
Yeah, that I will say is one of the things I do not miss about not teaching undergrads. I did teach in a
Jennifer,
very competitive entry program, and
I
I did get
I
phone
cannot
calls
think
from
of
parents,
anything worse. I
and
literally cannot think of anything worse.
that sent me. I'm like, excuse me, there are privacy laws here. I will not be discussing this with you.
No. And as the person, like, as being very much like intentionally in student facing positions and everything I did, like, the only things I have not done are financial aid and housing entirely by design. But in so many other pieces of student facing positions, and saying to parents, I can't help you with that. And parents saying, my money is going there. And then having to explain to them why I can't have the conversation. But then I could not do this when I was at an institution, and I can do this now. Also, having the conversation of this professor is not problematic. The issue is that the student hasn't ever interacted with somebody like this because all they know are teachers, and those are professionally trained people who their metric of success is based on, do students like the way they do things?
Yeah.
And for professors, their
Their
metric of
metric of success
success,
is number of publications at the end of each academic cycle.
yes. And honestly, there's a reason that every publication has the front page. What's the is excerpt? No, there's a
At the
what's
abstract.
the abstract. Thank you. There's a reason abstracts exist. You know why they exist? They exist for people like me. Okay. The abstract is where I say, am I going to press forward on this? Or is this totally out of my league? But you guys, we cannot demand that professors are teaching from the context of the abstract.
Yeah. There's a lot here about like how, and there, I'm sure there are many people far more informed than I am
Same.
about what it is in the past generation that has shifted in higher ed to in terms of cost, in terms of professionalization, in terms of stakes. It is not the same game that it was when you could go spend 4 years, major in English, get a bunch of what used to be called gentlemen's C's, and then leave and go get a job. That seems completely fairy tale material to in 2025. But as more and more people are supposed to be going to university, and the university itself is becoming more and more professionalized, like each degree is cramming more in and doing more. And I don't think the system is equipped to help them succeed. And I'm wondering, like, as we wrap this up, if you could, what are some things that you would want to tell, like a dean or a department chair or even a professor, about what it means to be a first year student in 2025?
Probably. So 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, what I would have said is distinctly different than what I would say today. It
Right,
is
because things are
profoundly
moving and
different.
changing fast. So what would you, yeah, keep going.
So I will say that Gen Z is the first generation that has gotten probably the most, like, I am the most willing to overlook the things that don't, like, that make me crazy. And that is because I really get that these are the kids that we hyped up kindergarten to, at least in the US. We hyped up kindergarten. And just about the time you were like getting this right, like you knew where your cubby was 100% of the time, and like you weren't peeing your pants and you weren't doing like the kindergarten stuff, we then said, hey, we're going to play this little game that's called Run and Hide to Save Your Life. Okay, so we're going to play this little game, and we are going to try and make this cute because your brain cannot problem solve at its age with this really big, scary thing. So we're going to try and make this a cute little game. And we're going to talk it down to keep you engaged. And then we're going to keep doing this. We are going to literally, repeatedly expose you to this for 13 years. And it's going to go from making it cute to like real talk. And statistically, it is now very clear that kids in high school are like, meh, the drills are a joke. I don't even care. Like the apathy is at an all-time high about this kind of stuff. And then we say to you, hey, you're going to take a year of college composition. And as a normal 18 or 19-year-old brain would say, what the what? Why would I take college composition? That's stupid. Also, I wrote plenty of papers in high school. The list goes on. But we're not saying you're going to do a year of college composition and we are going to do these things within this class, and you will come out of it as a better researcher, critical thinking, writing, exploring different things, articulating your thoughts, like all of this stuff, right? That like a true freshman comp year-long program, year-long curriculum should do. We don't say that. Instead, we just say, we have to do it because it's part of your general education. You know what? Gen Z ain't having to do anything. They do not want to hear what they have to do. These are kids that had to run and hide to save their lives. They're done being quiet. They're done complying. They're done fitting in. How about this? For the first week, we're going to talk about reliable sources. And we're not going to make fun of people. And we're not going to be cutesy. And we're not going to, this is not going to be like, you are an idiot if you don't know what it is. We are literally going to say, here's a list of things. Reliable sources, very subjective. But here are like, if your source has these 5 things, it's a reliable source. Now that you have discovered a reliable source, then what? And work through this kind of stuff.
Now you're armed to make some interesting claims, to do some interesting work, to engage in. But there's a delicate balance, I think, between being really explicit about the unwritten curriculum, really treating incoming students like masters of their own fate on the one, and also like acknowledging that we're dealing with developing humans and we're doing this as grown-ups, faculty, staff, and parents who are ourselves coming off of a period of radical social change, increased economic insecurity, and for ever larger numbers of people, actual trauma at the hands of violence of all sorts. And yeah, so we're asking a lot of institutions if what we're asking them to do is to crank out people who are ready to be taxpayers.
100%. Let's take that to college now for a minute. If a student says, this is not the right fit for me, what is the response to that? And if a faculty says, I love what I do, but this is not the way for me to do it, why are we faulting that? And if enough people say that this system has too many hidden pieces, please stop using the word bursar when everyone else calls it a business office. Literally, bursar does not exist anywhere but on a college campus.
Right? What a great word.
So like
the bursar's office.
Right? So
just step right back in time.
Right? Like it's okay to not be like the bursar's office. It's okay to say, go to the business office and do the thing.
Yeah.
Why are we holding on to this? Like, why are we grasping at power with hidden things?
On that note, and love to all the bursars out there.
Seriously,
you're doing it. You're doing the Lord's work.
Actually, met the husband of a bursar, and he literally was like trying to describe, not knowing my background,
Oh
not
gosh.
knowing anything about me, was like trying to describe it. And I was like, oh, so she works in the bursar's office. And he literally was like, how do you know
How do
about
you
the
know that
bursar's
word? Yeah.
office?
Yeah. My kids know how lucky they are to have had two parents whose careers have been in higher ed because the unwritten curriculum of higher ed was like dinner time conversation, what we call offices, how students navigate spaces, what work life looks like. Like it is a unique industry and it's facing some unique challenges. And I really appreciate you coming to talk about helping students navigate those challenges and a little window into where, man, if it's hard for students, that doesn't mean it's easy for faculty, right? Like I think it's hard. It's a hard place to
Yes.
feel like you can grow and be challenged and be accepted in growing and challenging versus I'm going to show up and I know stuff. I'm already
No,
done. There's a lot
and
of pressure there. So I appreciate that we get to look at that from both angles.
yes. And from the faculty standpoint, once upon a time, you were the expert in the room. And now you have to justify why you're the expert in the room.
And that feels like a demotion. That feels like an
It
insult.
does
That
not
feels
feel good.
outrageous and
Nobody
wrong.
wants to justify those things.
Yeah. Yeah. And because I told you so is actually not a justification.
Really? Oh, like this morning was that was decided this morning.
Oh, because I told you. So, thank you for this conversation. You mentioned TikTok, so that tells me you are on TikTok because
Yes.
that's where the kids are,
Okay,
which
I
is
don't have a TikTok channel because this conversation with you is very comfortable. This conversation without anyone,
talking to an empty screen. I get you.
it like,
Yeah. Okay. So we're not going to find you on TikTok.
no, you're not, except for I will say that I do have a favorite professor on TikTok. So there is a religious studies professor at the University of Alabama who is also a rabid WWE fan and has successfully figured out how to bring religious studies and wrestling in to the same conversation.
Man, this is the world is a beautiful place.
And honestly, I could listen to this guy talk all day. I could have this guy talk all day. Like I had a student who was supposed to go to Alabama and then made this like last minute panicky, I'm going to stay in state decision. And I will genuinely say the thing I was most disappointed about is that I was not going to be able to get from the student, what is this guy's class really like? No, I am not on TikTok. Yes, if I was really smart, I would like clip all this stuff and put it on TikTok. I might be married to somebody who says that should be done. And I'm just going to maybe hand it all over to him and say, make me a TikTok channel.
Okay, I'll share it with you so that he can, and
Yeah.
he can share it with me too. Studentempowered.com, thestudенtempowered.com. Okay, that will be in the notes for the show.
Yes. And Andersen is Andersen,
The Danish spelling, not the
the
Swedish
Danish spelling.
spelling.
And I will send you the stuff from 10 to 25 and any
Excellent,
other
excellent. I did make
things.
a note of that
Yeah.
title, but
Yeah.
that
Anything
sounds like
else that I rattled off, I'll
is 10 to
send that to you.
25 something that a professor would benefit from reading?
Oh my goodness. Yes.
Okay.
Honestly, I don't know a single person who wouldn't benefit from reading it. And I feel really creepy. I sound like I'm stalking the author because I'm like such a fan. Like I get it. Like I feel like I'm stalking him. I gave it actually, I gave it as a gift to my kids person that took him through the whole admissions process at Xavier University, like through his admissions person at Xavier, and was like, you potentially have the hardest client yet. here's a little gifty. And but it's not like light reading. It's written by an academic, but it's not also too smart for the average person. It's an
And so
excellent
I
book.
just found it online.
Yeah.
The cover has a blurb from Carol Dweck,
Yeah.
who wrote
Yeah.
Mindset, which is the book on growth mindset. So it already comes highly
Mhm.
recommended by somebody whose work I admire. 10 to 25, The Science of Motivating Young People, a groundbreaking approach to leading the next generation and making your own life easier. Excellent. I will add it to my wish
At it.
list.
And it's available as an audiobook. He reads
Beautiful.
it.
Oh, beautiful.
I know David. He doesn't know this, but there's
Good for him, reading his
some
own book. Okay,
college
well then
employee
this
dropout.
will come out by the end of the year
Okay.
and people will hear it. And I hope that people find you who want to talk about how to support students who are entering university because
Or have entered and oops, that didn't go as
yeah,
planned.
we're getting lost in the map. Okay,
Yep.
excellent.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Maya. Take
Thank
good
you.
care and happy end of the year holidays and stuff.
That's right. Happy. Yes.